most problems are a break in the communication. I've tried to make an effort to do those hard things like first thing in the morning. I go to the gym first thing in the morning, and then when I get to the office, I make sure that anybody that had any kind of customer issue, complaint, or whatever that is, that's the first thing that I do in the day is try to contact them and just get that open communication with them. Because if they are upset with something, it's usually just because they feel like they weren't listened to or they weren't told or communicated with. And changing my mindset and method is like, let's do that hard stuff first, because then the rest of the day is super easy. And what I've come to find out is once I address that stuff, those things really started to get smaller and smaller. Like we don't see as many complaints, or we don't have as many frustrated customers because I've addressed it and we communicated over and over again now with them.
Welcome to the Roll Up and Roll Out podcast. Sit down with blue-collar business owners and inspired entrepreneurs to get the industry insights from the leaders that grow our local communities and learn how to scale your business. Regardless of GED, these people know how to GSD. Here is your host, Paul Childers. Let's get to work.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Roll Up and Roll Out. My name is Paul Childers. I am the host of this podcast series featuring blue-collar business owners who may have their GED, may not, but they all have their GSD because they know how to get shit done. So today we've got Dane Patton on with Pest, Rats, Wildlife Prevention. So Dane, what got you into the industry you're in? And, just off of that too, tell us just a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on here, Paul. Appreciate the invite. I'm Dane. I own Bats to Rats, Wildlife Control and Prevention here. I am in Lincoln, Nebraska. So wildlife control is definitely a niche industry that you don't think about very much. But, if you own a home, you own property, more than likely you're going to come in contact with some sort of wildlife at some point. So 17 years ago, I got started in pest control. And everybody knows what pest control is, spraying for bugs, treating for termites and that. Part of pest control is rodent control, mouse control. People, put out poison or set up traps to catch and kill mice. But what I kind of realized is, mice got in there somehow. There's some sort of opening, some sort of hole somewhere on the outside of the house. And if we figured out where those openings and holes were, we could stop mice from coming into people's homes. And so many years ago, started figuring out how to get those holes sealed up in homes and stop mice from getting in. And it's kind of the exact opposite of thinking of what most pest control companies think. Their whole deal is to sell you on a year's contract. So they have to keep coming back out over and over again to kind of solve your problem, Band-Aid on an oil leak, if you will. Mm-hmm. And my whole thought is, if you call me, I'm here to solve your problem. So I'm going to come out one time, fix your problem. You shouldn't have to call me again because those mice can't get in anymore. So I'd have a lot of happy customers, but they were canceling their pest control service. And I just thought there was a different way to do it. And if I could figure out how to seal a house up for mice, I could probably figure out how to seal it up for other animals too. Yep. And bats were a big problem in our area. And Bats to Rats was born 9 years ago.
Gotcha. So it's interesting you said that, because I think there's a lot of businesses that sometimes, I don't want to say this with coming off the wrong way, but sometimes do things to fix the somewhat immediate issue, but also to make sure that people still come back to them for business down the road. And really, all basic business models tell us that cash flow and steady, reoccurring income is the safest form of income. So as you're doing it the way you're doing it, you're obviously, shutting the door on some of that recurring income. So what have you found by doing it that way that has kind of surprised you from a business standpoint, as to how the money's still been coming in?
Yeah, for sure. So most pest control companies are a reoccurring model. Like I said, they sell you a year-long contract and they just keep coming out every month, every other month to put down poisons, toxicants around your house. I want to fix that problem. So what we've really had to do is provide the best solution and customer service as possible for these customers and actually solve their problem. And then we've got a raving fan. We've got somebody that's really happy with our service. And then what do they do? Then it's word of mouth referrals. And how do we build our brand off of that? And that's what I've done the last 9 years. And every year we've increased our revenue year over year, because in my line of work, I'm not necessarily harming the animals. We're installing one-way escape systems so bats can get out of your house. They just can't get back in. Or we're sealing up the house so those ones can't get into somebody's home. Doesn't mean that we're getting rid of the wildlife problems. There's still going to be a nuisance out there. There's always going to be a large carrying capacity for those populations. And we're always building new homes. We're always getting new roofs. We're always doing home construction. So those builders' gaps and cracks are always going to happen, and those critters are always going to find a way in. So we just continue to move to the next customer, the next home, and seal that up and prevent it as best as we can. And then a hailstorm comes in, and then we got a whole city we got to rebat-proof.
No, that's a valid point, right? So, what ultimately got you into, the pest control business? And was that like a career choice of interest, or is that just at the time you had a position and had an opening and you took it and then ran with it?
Sure. No, it was definitely an interesting choice. I used to manage family fun centers like laser tag, go-karts, arcades, stuff like that. I used to do that, and then I had my own kid and got tired of dealing with other people's kids all the time. And that was kind of a nights and weekends kind of job, and having my own kid at a very young age, like I had to be at home nights and weekends to help raise him. So I was just looking through job postings to see what was available, kind of a regular 9 to 5. And I have a bit of a construction background. My dad's done construction all his life. So I didn't want to do construction, but what could I do where I'm working outside and helping people that way? And I saw pest control was hiring. And I was like, when I was a kid, I liked to kill bugs. That seems like it could be fun. And I got into it, and, I was fairly young when I got into pest control, and everybody was like 50, 60. There was even a 70-year-old guy. They're all fairly older than me. And it was very beneficial to kind of learn from them because they had so much experience, and to see what they've done and then take my new ideas and implement them into what we were doing, and really seeing the growth there.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of value in understanding the wisdom and the lessons learned from the guys that are retiring. And, we're seeing a lot of older generations, retiring out now with not that many new replacements coming in. So for your business, have you had, have you been hiring any staff, and how many do you have? And have you had any issues with finding employees that want to come and work?
Yeah. So, when I started, it was just me, a truck, ladders, and some tools. And I owned my own job. So I started a company, but I just owned my own job. And I was a solo entrepreneur for the first 3 years. And then I brought on a technician, kind of trained him. I didn't know a whole lot about hiring and training. I knew I had too many customers, and I was building other people's businesses by sending them away. So trying to figure that out. And I went through a couple, employees I just hired because somebody came to me and said that they wanted a job. And, I felt like, okay, I can just teach you how to do this. Well, that's not really how hiring and training goes, but we live and we learn, and that's how we grow. So then I was able to bring on an employee, and he's actually been with me. He's my lead technician. He's been with me for 6 years now. Okay. So he was in the construction, had a construction background as well. So that's been helpful, and I can teach him all about the wildlife aspect of it. And so he's been with me. Then my second hire was a like a part-time office manager, just kind of doing data entry, the paperwork stuff that was building up on my desk while I was in the field.
Yeah.
And she's turned into my full-time office manager and is absolutely fantastic and runs the majority of what we do here in-house, which freed me up to do, the inspections and the sales part of it. And then I brought on, so she's been with me for full-time for 4 years and like part-time before that for about a year and a half. And then I have another technician. He's been with me for 2 years this month. I hired a new guy this week, and then I offered another guy that's going to start in 2 weeks. So, went from a one-man show to now we'll be a team of 5 full-timers. And then I also have a part-timer that just kind of does some general maintenance and helps around the shop when needed.
Yeah, that's nice. And that's a good thing. I think a good mix to have. When you were hiring and you were going through this process, what have you refined a little bit of that process now, being into it for a few years? And have you found that through refining it, a lot of it has been focused around you having very clear core values and I guess maybe the right word for it is like a mission statement for your business that you can kind of sell to the applicants?
Oh yeah, for sure. And those were things that I didn't have established. Like I knew inside of me, and how I lived my life, what they were, but it wasn't something that I was constantly talking about or had posted on the wall or stuff like that. But now we do, because I know how valuable it is. And the first few people that I brought in, they didn't necessarily align with the values that I had, and I didn't understand that at that point. But now, as I've gotten people that have stuck with me for long enough, it's because that we mesh in a way that we value the same stuff. We value service and integrity, excellence, consistency, responsibility. Like those are our core values in our business, and that's what I talk about a lot. I talk about how we sell on education. We don't sell on fear. In our industry, it's super easy to come to you. Call us because there's a bat flying around your house.
No.
And we come to you and we say, oh, well, this bat is going to give you rabies and has all these diseases, and you need to, pay us this much money and we'll take care of this and da da da. Like, no, I come to you, I show you why it happened, I give you a solution, explain why we do it the way we do, and it's on you to make the decision if you want us to help you or not. So that's the biggest thing that I would say is instilling that values. And now when I'm hiring and training these guys, they know, who I am and what I'm about and what our company and our culture is about before, they sign the line to come work for me. And, I want to make them better individuals because we have a solid set of values and a culture here. And that way, when they're out in the public, somebody can see they're wearing a Bass Tourette shirt and they're like, oh man, I know those guys.
Oh. Yeah, I think culture gets thrown around a lot in a lot of influencer circles out there and networks, but I don't think a lot of companies have really grasped what culture, really is in a business. And, one of the things that I enjoyed was one of the companies I worked for had a true culture, kind of like what you're saying. It wasn't just, here's our core values, these are the things that you should follow. No, it was like everybody lived the core values. And the cool part was they're strong enough and tied well enough into people's job descriptions that the employees would hold each other accountable to that stuff too. So if they saw somebody doing something that didn't fit that culture, they would call that other employee out because we had a high standard of accountability within our team, saying that this doesn't go unless everybody's on board and we're going in the same direction. So I love that you went even down into the details of just when you're out in public and you're wearing our uniform and you're driving our trucks or vehicles, like this is how we carry ourselves, and here's how we interact in the public, and here's how we interact around each other, because that really is culture. When you leave work and you still live the values of the place you're working, because somebody in the public might recognize you, that's culture. So That's really cool that you have it that, that dialed in. And I'm sure you still feel like you've got a lot to learn and implement as well in that area.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, we're constantly learning every single day. There's always something that can be, tweaked or changed. The three words that I say almost every single day here is improvise, adapt, and overcome. So in our line of work, it's always something different. So there's the house is never the same, and the animal's never the same. I mean, there's a lot of similarities, and that's how we're able to stay consistent with the level of service that we provide. But it's always something different. So we've got to learn, adapt, and change in the field, and be calm, because most of the time with what we're dealing with, there's somebody on the other end of the line or at the house that's just, they're not sure how to deal with this situation.
Oh yeah. I've chased my fair share of bats around the house with a tennis racket or a fishing net or whatever to try to catch them and get them out. And as my wife and daughter are locked in a bedroom screaming and hooting and hollering. So I've experienced that in person. I'm sure many others have too. When you are dealing with customers that are going through situations like that, do you guys, are you guys 24 hours then that you have people on call, or what does that whole process look like? And, how have your employees bought into that as well?
Sure. So when I first started my business, I was 24/7. That's what I offered. And that was actually a lot because I was a one-man show. So I'd work all day and then I'd be home with the family or sleep in the middle of the night and somebody call. I remember going and pulling bats out. I had to pull a skunk out of somebody's dryer vent one night. Just crazy stuff. And when I just started, I started this business from the ground up, from scratch. So I had to offer stuff like that to be able to be known. And then it got to a point where I didn't actually have to do that after I built a brand and people knew who I was and that. So I stopped offering 24-hour emergency service, and we're open 8 to 5 Monday through Friday, because another thing that goes back to my culture is, I'm a family man first. I have a wife, I have 3 boys, and my family time is important. And if you work here, your family time with your family is important to me. So I want to make sure that we're not overextending our reach with our employees and saying, I need you to work on the weekends. I need you to take this call overnight. And our customers need to know that as well. They need to have that expectation that, we work during the day. We take care. If you have a problem at night, we'll contact you first thing in the morning and try to get to you as soon as possible. But that's kind of sacred time for us. So
that's good. And that's cool that you tie that back into just the entire culture aspect of your business, because sometimes a business just necessitates that you've got to have some form of 24-hour service. Having worked in farm service, when farmers are going, you got to have guys that are willing to, be around the clock, because when a farmer goes down, they've got to get, they got to get brought back up. So having come from that side of things and knowing how that works, what we found through that was that each employee is motivated by different things. I mean, they all like money, but what we found is that sometimes for some of the guys, when that would be their weekend rotation, in order to get them to do that, if they made, consistent rotations, they would, whatever, maybe they wanted additional vacation time or whatever it was. And that went a long way for them versus just giving them extra money. Have you set anything up like that, with your employees, where sometimes the bonuses or the benefits aren't always tied to money, but stuff that they find important to themselves?
Oh yeah, for sure. We do a lot of that. I mean, I offer lots of extra paid holiday time and stuff like that. Lots of, when I did this before, I worked for a corporate company, and it was like, you get those corporate holidays and that's it. And I make sure that we've got, the day, after Thanksgiving, the day before 4th of July, or the day after 4th of July, stuff like that is stuff that's included, that's kind of above and beyond what you normally see at a certain at certain jobs. recognizing my guys because of our core value. We keep pointing because they're around my office in here. So I do have them up now, but recognizing them for those and like getting good reviews, stuff like that, giving them, and then I have, they have the ability to take time off when they need it. As long as they give me some notice, I don't ever kind of harp on people like, well, you don't have any paid time off, can't have it. I mean, family stuff happens. Kids get sick, stuff like that. I understand. I have kids, my own. So let's be as reasonable as we can. I mean, and the people that we bring in, they're not going to be ones that take advantage of that kind of stuff either.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's an important aspect of that. When you have that stuff in place, is understanding and identifying the ones, hopefully before you even hire them, that could have that kind of, attitude. But you're never perfect when you're working with people, especially in the hiring process. So, you kind of alluded to, you did say one of your kind of like core things was, to improvise, stay calm, and just figure out a way to get stuff done. How often as a business owner have you found that has been like the key to like your growth? Because nobody really gives you, there's information. They always say success leaves, trails, but every business and business owner is different. So like, have you found at certain points through your growth that you've literally just had to put your head down and improvise and just figure it out? And what did that process look like for you earlier on versus now?
Oh, for sure. Like one of the big changes that I would say is, like customer complaints. Like, that's always something that, we could get 1,000 5-star reviews, but that one star review is what we worry about or what we think about. And just as owners and that's like, we've helped so many people, but that one person that we didn't help is what bothers us and worries us the most. And then we put that stuff off. And what I, come to understand is like most problems are just a break in the communication. So I've tried to make an effort to do those hard things like first thing in the morning. I go to the gym first thing in the morning. And then when I get to the office, I make sure that anybody that had any kind of customer issue, complaint, or was dissatisfied with something or whatever that is, that's the first thing that I do in the day is try to contact them and just get that open communication with them. Because if they are upset with something, it's usually just because they feel like they weren't listened to or they weren't told or communicated with. And changing my mindset and method is like, let's do that hard stuff first, because then the rest of the day is super easy. And what I've come to find out is once I address that stuff, those things really started to get smaller and smaller. Like we don't see as many complaints or we don't have as many frustrated customers because I've addressed it and we communicated over and over again now with them. So that was something like I had to improvise and adapt on my own, and I feel like we're overcoming that. And I tell people, nobody's perfect. We try to do the best we can when we show up, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to be a man of my word and have high integrity. So if I think that we can fix something, I'm going to continue to be coming to your place and help you, solve this until it gets to a point where we just can't, or I'm going to say, here's some matches, you just burn your house down.
There's always a solution to be found. It might just one you want to hear, but no, that's good. That's good that you say that. I spent a lot of my time in service, was in automotive for a while. And so, yeah, I mean, it's funny when you identify that if you just address those negative like reviews and comments like head on, what we found is that people that are looking at your reviews don't necessarily care about that 1 star and what that person wrote. What they care about is they want to see your response and how it was worded, how it was handled, and how you articulated it, and then they move on. And where a lot of businesses go wrong is they get really petty in those reviews. And it's like, man, I know I've done it when I've been looking at a company, if I want to do business with them, and I'll read reviews and I'll be like, man, that owner is super snarky, or that manager that is super snarky. I'm not going to go there. And all it would have taken was just a little bit of, hey, appreciate your feedback. You know, my owner at the dealership, he'd always put his personal cell phone on those reviews and say, hey, if I'm going to try to get a hold of you, if I can, here's my cell phone number, reach out anytime. Let's just chat and we'll make it right. You know, and sometimes it's just that simple, and it takes the weight off of your shoulders of putting that stuff off. Because when you have something that you don't want to do and you just keep putting it off, it just seems like it just continuously like gets more weight, more heavier throughout the day and the week. And, you know, sometimes we just, for whatever reason, like, I don't want to do this right now. And then all of a sudden it's 4 days later, you're just like, oh, I have to do this now. And then it's worse because you made that customer wait too. So that's good that you recognize that, you know, and solve that. So we got just a little bit, about a minute left here, but one last question for you. In the next coming years, you know, the next, 3 to 5 years, like what kind of growth and where are you hoping to take the company in that time frame?
Yeah, that's a great question. 2024 is going to be a year of expansion. Like I said, I'm just bringing on a couple more technicians. We're based here locally in Lincoln, Nebraska. My plan later this year is to open up a location in the biggest city in Nebraska, which is Omaha. So we'll have a second location there, and then 3 to 5 years, I'm looking at wanting to grow into the Kansas City market, the Des Moines market in Iowa, and then I would even like to get somewhere in the Colorado, kind of Denver area, somewhere like that, and maybe, you know, acquire some other companies and bring them into the Bats of Rats fold and kind of rebrand and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah,
that's what the horizon's looking like. We've got, you know, we got to break them down into rocks and everyday tasks to be able to get there.
Yep. Yeah, you can't bite off a huge chunk, right? I mean, it's hard to look out and go, man, in 15 years, this is where I want to go. Jacob Stoller was talking I think he might have posted this on Facebook, but he's like, there is no such thing as a 5-year plan because too much stuff can change in 5 years. But he's like, there is such a thing as a 5-year goal, and then having stuff in place to try to get there, but understanding that you might have to improvise along the way and change things up, you know, so that you can, you know, keep going towards that big goal. But maybe there's an opportunity that comes up that you're like, man, this is too good to pass up on. So that's good. That's all I've got. As far as questions for you, if people want to, you know, because this is going to be a nationwide thing, the podcast is. So if anybody is, you know, looking to get a hold of you that might be listening in your service areas, I'm assuming right now you are just in Lincoln.
Yeah, so we're based in Lincoln. We service all of Nebraska.
Okay.
So that's kind of our service area. We do get into a little bit of you know, northern Kansas, western Missouri, western Iowa right now.
Okay.
So if you want to find, you know, batstoRats.com, BATSTORATS.com. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram. If you want to, you know, follow me, it's just Dane Patton on Instagram or Dane Patton on Facebook. It's DAINEPATTON. And that's where I'm at.
Definitely worth a follow. You post some really good content on your Facebook and Instagram page. So it's one of those things you're one of the probably the 10 people I look forward to seeing posts from, because you have such good information that you share. I think that you've probably learned from experience. So definitely worth the follow.
That's I just try to share my journey of what I'm going through as being a husband, a father, a business owner, and somebody that's gone through a 115 pounds of weight loss. So that's kind of what I do.
That's awesome. I appreciate your time today, and thank you so much for being on the show.
All right. Thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Roll Up and Roll Out. I look forward to seeing you guys on the next show. Thanks.